up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith, and welcome back to the Nerdy Narrative. On this channel, I like to talk about all sorts of bookish related things. My top 3 favorite genres are science fiction, fantasy, and horror. But I also enjoy reading classics, literary fiction, a little bit of nonfiction, and of course, we can't leave out the picture books, manga, and comics. On today's episode of Fun, I am going to bring to you my June 2021 monthly wrap-up. I'm just going to quickly recap all of the things that I read in the month of June, what star rating I gave it, and a couple of brief thoughts about each. Hopefully that will help you make the determination if that is something you would like to read. I use the 5-star rating system and it's just very basic. I am someone who rates books off of an emotional level. I typically know what I'm going to rate something as soon as I finish with it. Sometimes I'll be halfway through with it and I know what I'm going to rate it. 5 stars means I loved it. There was literally nothing that could be changed about it to make me love it even more. Perfection. 4 stars, I still loved it, but there might be one little box of mine that didn't get checked off that I thought could have been done a little better. 3 stars, it was good. I'm glad I read it. It just means there were a few things that I didn't like or I thought could be done better. 2 stars, there is potential for greatness there, but it just wasn't quite met. 1 star, I did not like it at all, but I finished it. Okay, so with that in mind, let's run through these and see what I thought about all of the things that I read in the month of June. The first genre I'm going to start with is what I read in the science fiction category because I only read one. Greater Good is the second book in the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy by Timothy Zahn. I gave it 3 stars. It was written really well. There were things in here that I enjoyed reading about. We did spend a lot of time with our secondary characters. There was also a whole lot of what I would call filler or fluff. It could have been condensed. There are things here that I definitely know is important to how this trilogy is going to wrap up, but I feel that could have been condensed and either added into book 1 or the 3rd book that's coming out and just made it a duology. That's all I have to say about that. Next genre category we will hit will be picture books. And I didn't read any manga this month. I stayed over in the comics, and the first one I read is volume 1 of Hack and Slash. This is a comic that is put out by Image Comics, which is a creator-owned comic. And this particular series was put out by Tom Seeley and Stefano Caselli, I believe is how it is pronounced. I love it. It's a slasher in comic form, but it has a completely different premise. In this particular story, Cassie Hack is the daughter of a slasher. But her mother died and came back to life, as always happens in slasher movies. They never stay dead the first time. And Cassie has figured out that these slashers are made because when they died, there was so much anger that they come back. And she is very afraid that were she to die, she would come back as a slasher. And so what she's decided to do is she goes around hunting slashers and killing them and making sure they stay dead. I loved it. I can't wait to continue in this series. I need to go by and pick up another one. Comic series are really rather weight and rate as a whole, but this one I definitely enjoyed and gave it 4 stars. This is mature content. I would not let my teenager read this. Not at all. It is classic slasher with girls in skimpy pajamas and panty shots galore, so 100% would not let my children read this. My other read in the comic category, I finished the 2nd omnibus of the Green Lantern series written by Jeff Johns. I enjoyed the artistry of this volume more than I did the first one, but I liked all of the storylines of the novels that were bound up in the first one better, if that makes sense. So this one, if I'm just going off it alone, I would say 4 stars. There is a 3rd volume in this particular series, I do believe, by Jeff Johns, so I'm going to be looking into picking that up and completing it, and then giving an overall opinion based on that. Let's slide over into our classic literary fiction category and start with Wise Blood by Flannery O'Connor. This one was a 5-star read for me. I enjoyed every moment I spent with this book. I laughed a lot. It was so funny to me. 5 stars. It checked all of my boxes. I loved the characters. I loved the theme that it explored of redemption and retribution, false prophets. It was so good, and I can't wait to reread it. When it has reread capability, that is always a huge plus. But I really loved it. I do have a live stream up on the channel where the guys from Codex Cantina and I talked about this book. I'll link that in the cards for you, so I won't go into further detail here, except to say I love this book. It was the first book I ever read by Flannery O'Connor. I didn't know at the time that it was her first book that she wrote, so I am definitely going to be reading more of her. Next, I read Hitting a Straight Lick with a Crooked Stick by Zora Neale Hurston. This is a collection of short stories by her, and they were wonderful. Zora Neale Hurston is an author I trust. I expect the best. I expect greatness. I expect excellence, and I got it. Now, there were maybe 4 stories I didn't particularly care for. I didn't like the format of how she wrote them. She made a numbered list, and it just broke my concentration from being able to just really digest the cohesiveness of the story. And even though I did listen to the audiobook with it, who Anjanuga Ellis is amazing, I just still felt a disconnect in that format. But the rest of the stories were phenomenal. The first 2 or 3 are my favorite. I'm excited because one of those is going to be covered by the Codex Cantina very soon, and I can't wait to see what they think about it. You know, this is another one I will be rereading. The stories are so impactful. I feel so bad for Zora Neale Hurston. She was married many times. I don't know that she ever found true love, but man, she could write about it. Just, oh my word. I just wonder sometimes if these short stories were wishes of her heart, things that she wished she could have. I don't know. I just love her as an author. Automatically, when I pick up a Zora Neale Hurston book, I expect it to be 5 stars, and no surprise, that's exactly what I gave this one. Next, I read a couple of short stories from the complete stories of Clarice Lispector. I read Daydream and Drunkenness of a Young Lady and A Chicken. And A Chicken was hilarious. I don't know if it was supposed to be funny, but the way that I read it was hysterical. More on that to come later. Daydream and Drunkenness of a Young Lady was definitely more serious, and I don't know that I fully comprehended what that one was actually about. I'll have to reread that one again. Clarice Lispector is a phenomenal writer. I always enjoy my time spent in her stories. They always make me think. I love that about this author, and I'm still working on her collection. There is a ton in here, so you're going to be hearing about a lot of these in the months to come. And then getting into the thriller and horror genre, I read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, which I guess could actually be a sci-fi thriller. Actually, it is a sci-fi thriller. Actually, I consider Blake Crouch's books love stories. I read this one, I gave it 4 stars. While I gave it 4 stars, it's not my favorite Blake Crouch. It's not. It's my least favorite of his work, but still a really great book in my opinion. I know a ton of people fly through this book because it is a very fast read. I took it slow. I think I read it over maybe 4 days. I also listened to the audiobook, which I feel after talking with people, that was the way to go. A lot of folks read this and they didn't connect with the main character, and I felt by listening to the audiobook, I got that emotional connection. I love immersion reading where I'm listening to the audiobook and reading along with my eyes. It helps me to focus on what I'm reading because sometimes my brain wants to think about 20 other things besides reading. So immersion reading helps keep me focused on what I am reading. And I also feel like sometimes when a narrator is really good, they just make that reading experience so much better. I was also extremely fortunate to be sent the arc for the new novella coming out by Ross Jeffrey called Only the Stains Remain. Cemetery Gates Media sent me a copy of this to read and review, and I loved it. I sat down and literally read the entire thing the day that I got it. 5 stars. Ross Jeffrey wrote this beautifully. Absolutely beautifully. The writing style was top notch. The narrator, the main character, the depth and emotion of what he went through as a child. This book does focus on the subject matter of child abuse, and then later when that child has grown up and entered adulthood, his exploration into thoughts of vengeance on those that hurt him and his brother as a child was just absolutely amazing. It was done in a very tasteful manner. It was very authentic. I loved the writing so much. It is an insanely impactful story. 5 stars literally isn't enough, but that is the top of my scale. Next in that category, I read The Haunted Forest Tour. This one, while it was a very gory horror story, it was also really funny. I gave it a pretty high rating of 4 stars. Not because of the story really, because the story wasn't that great. The characters weren't really that developed, and the scary things in the story were kind of bad. But the premise, I really enjoyed the premise. I did like the overarching storyline that was going on that you really don't know about until the end of the book. But what I really loved is how gory it was. Not really scary. It was kind of stupid scary. But you would just have all of this gore, and then all of a sudden there would be some really hilarious comments from one of the characters that was absolutely hysterical. I laughed so much. And when I'm just laughing that much and enjoying it that much, even though it was what I would call stupid scary, it'd make a great B-rated movie. I loved it, and when I love it, I'm gonna give it a high rating. So I gave it 4, you know, because it definitely could have been better, but I enjoyed it very much. I read another arc this month, one that I got approved for over on NetGalley, and that is called The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling. Guys, if you have a NetGalley account, go try to pick up this book. If you don't, you should definitely try to read it when it comes out, but I would say borrow it from your library. I don't feel that it has any reread capability. It's that kind of thriller horror. I don't think you would ever want to read it again after you read it the first time, but it had so much suspense. I loved the story. I loved the premise. Some of it I thought was predictable, but I was wrong. And there was a time when I thought that the author revealed something too soon, that it was going to ruin the suspense and that thrill that I was getting, that creep factor. Oh, no. She did for like a part of it, but she introduced a new way to creep me out. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I'm so glad that I read it. It was really funny. I was only going to read like a chapter or 2 a night, and it was all I could think about once I started it. And so I flew through it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I am definitely going to read more by Caitlin Starling. And then I also read a collection of short stories called Aborted Windows, Dead Leaves by Michael Jess Alexander. This was an audiobook sent to me by Spooky House Press, who is the publisher for this collection. And I think they kind of sent it to me to get my opinion about the audiobook narrator, but I was so blown away by the writing style of the author that was all I could focus on. I enjoyed the narrator. The narrator was Jonathan Sleep. He has a very pleasant voice. In my little humble opinion, he did great for some of the stories, but in others, his voice just wasn't right for it. There were times that there were things, characters that would speak in a menacing or in a way that was supposed to strike fear and terror, and he couldn't get that. His voice to me would be perfect for a Western, a historical fiction, something along those lines. It was very pleasant. He had a nice drawl. I felt like he was a fellow Southerner. But the writing of Michael Jess Alexander, I immediately went back to Spooky House Press and I was like, so what else do you have by this guy? I can't wait for him to put out more stuff for me to read. He had a beautiful writing style. It was a very conversational, storytelling type of way, but he just had a beautiful way of using words to tell his stories. I loved this collection, and as a result, I gave it 5 stars. Another NetGalley arc that I was approved for that I read was the Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. That one is coming out July 13th. I am thinking I'm going to do a rant review for this one, and NetGalley requested that we not post our reviews until the date of the book release. However, there are still tons of reviews out there on Goodreads. Everybody that wrote a 3-star review that is published, I agree with. The things that they were saying, I see where some people said that Grady Hendrix paid tribute to all of the slashers from the past, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Scream, all of those. I don't call what he wrote paying tribute. He flat out ripped off those stories. Like the final girls in the support group each had a story that matched up exactly to Friday the 13th. The brother of the final girl dressed up in the suit with the mask and the machete and then kills all the people in the psychiatric hospital. I mean, it is the exact story. I was 25% of the way in and I canceled my pre-order for the book. I was going to purchase this book, and that changed very quickly. It is not one I would ever reread again. And we will finish out with all of my fantasy reads that I had for the month of June. Let's start with Voice of War by Zach Argyle, which is the first book in his Threadlight series. Zach was doing a giveaway for the audiobook version of Voice of War on his Instagram, and I won a copy. I was stoked. And I went straight to listening. The narrator, Adam Gold, is a top favorite of mine. He was amazing. He did such a great job voicing these characters. He is these characters to me. I loved Voice of War. I gave it 4 stars. I saw that book 2 was already out. I went ahead and downloaded it on my Kindle through my Kindle Unlimited subscription, but Zach told me that Adam Gold is recording the 2nd book, so I'm gonna have to wait until that comes out. I just need Adam reading this book to me as I follow along on my Kindle. I just have to. He is amazing. This book was great. It has a 4-star rating right now. Depending on what happens with a certain character in book 2, I may be coming back and upgrading this book to a 5. There was just a character that felt very similar to another character I've met in another series recently, and so I just didn't enjoy that character as much because it was so similar. But the other characters were phenomenal. I really like Laurel. Other people don't seem to like her as much, and I've just been in the self-published Discord on my little hill where I'm defending Laurel. Come join me there if you've read this book. We had multiple POVs, but they weren't all introduced at once. You know, we started out with one storyline here and these characters and got introduced. And then through that perspective, we would meet another character and then we would switch to that one's perspective and get that one's story and how it played into the first one and how they got connected. And then we would get another one introduced. It was a process. We didn't get them all at once. It was slowly throughout the book, how the threads wove together for one big story. I loved that. Absolutely loved it. I love the world. I love the magic. I love the characters. I love the writing style. It was fantastic. Can't wait to continue with this series. Next, let's talk about A Drowned Kingdom by P.L. Stewart. This is a first book in what I believe is going to be a trilogy. And it just didn't connect with me. I ended up DNFing it. I am 100% going to pick this book back up later. I definitely think it was a timing issue. The portion that I read felt very complex and the character was giving me a lot of information. Our main character was our narrator and he was very, very descriptive, and I was not receptive to that at the time that I tried to read it. So I soft DNFing it this month. I am definitely going to wait, give it a few months, and then try that one again. I also finished Wolves of the Kala, which is book 5 in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, and gave it 4 stars. This is my least favorite book of the Dark Tower series so far. Now, I say that, it was still a good book, still a 4-star read for me, and one that I will definitely reread. I love this series. The Dark Tower series is amazing. One of the best fantasy series. Might even end up being in my top 5 overall. However, this one was the first one I do feel didn't have its own unique feel. The other 4 were definitely all different, all unique, but this one took a page out of Wizard and Glass as it was a story within a story. And the story that was in the story just wasn't that compelling. It was at first, but I think it just went on too long. And it also may be because the outer story was so much more interesting. I enjoyed it. I loved it. Not my favorite. And I'm still super excited to see where the next one's going to take me in the Dark Tower series. Oh man. I read book 2 in the Broken Earth trilogy, The Oblast by N.K. Jemisin. 5 stars. I'm going to go ahead and predict all of N.K. Jemison's books are going to be 5 stars for me. What she did with this one, with her characters, oh my word. The theming of this book was amazing. She continued to develop the world. She continued to flesh out all of the things that are in this world. We learned more history about it. Our characters have been more developed. The different races have been more developed. How they view themselves. Oh man. I love how this book has these different types of people. You have your Origins, which can do earth magic. You have your Stills. They're just normal humans who can't do magic. And you have Stone Eaters, who eat stone and have a magic of their own. And then you have Guardians, who their magic is basically to control the Orogenes. They all 4 see each other differently. They do not like each other. They kill each other a lot of times just on sight. And while they're all different, there were characters from each of these 4 types asked, how do you see yourself? And they all said human. I mean, it was just absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I love this series. My final read of the month, that is Tagana by Guy Gavriel Kay. This book is a masterpiece. Steve was telling me, oh hey, his writing gets better. Wait till you read his other stuff. And I'm going, how does it get better than this? Because his writing was beautiful. It's not purple prose, it's kind of lavender prose. Where he shines is his character work. I'm over here crying for one of the bad guys. He's getting his just desserts and I am sympathetic for him. I feel bad for him getting what he deserves because Guy Gavriel Kay put me in these characters' shoes, all of them, what their driving forces were, what their motivations were, why they did what they did. And oh man, he had me crying in the 4th chapter. That has never left me. The feeling, that interaction between a father and son really struck me. I'm not even a mother. I'm not. But I just felt that interaction in my bones. And oh my gosh, there were so many times between the good characters and the bad characters, I didn't know what I wanted them to do. I was so conflicted. Did I want them to do the right thing, get vengeance, or did I want them to do the wrong thing and be selfish? It was so difficult. But I can tell you one thing. Every time a character from Tagana thought about Tagana, their home, said the name of their home, I would whisper it aloud to myself, Tagana. I won't tell you why that's important. I won't tell you what that means. You need to read the book and discover it for yourself. Just the feeling that I would get when reading about Tagana. Oh man, it's just beautiful. I can't wait to reread it. But this one definitely has to be an immersion read for me. I have to have the audiobook to go with it. The narrator was amazing. He just really brought these characters to life. Just really made me connect with them. This book was amazing. 5 friggin' stars. all the stars, all the stars, all the time. I can't wait to reread it. And if I had read it when my friend Steve told me to read it last year, as he pointed out, well, if you read it when I told you to, when you bought it, you could already be rereading it. Yes, I'm sorry. And that will take care of all of the things that I read in the month of June. I had a phenomenal reading month, but if I had to pick my least favorite read of the month, it would definitely have to be Greater Good. That was my, I think, lowest rated book of the month, and I just felt like it was kind of a waste of time. I love Timothy Zahn's writing. I liked reading about the secondary characters, but in my opinion, those could have been told like in a short story format, a collection of short stories about the secondary characters in this little trilogy. So yeah, definitely my least favorite. Now, as far as favorite would definitely be between Oblast Gate and Tigana. For completely different reasons. I think the Oblast Gate has really important themes, really brings to light stuff that we as a race of human beings need to read and take note of and be made aware of. But man, the beauty of this story, I don't think I can pick between these two. I would definitely have to say these two are my favorite reads of the month. How many books did you guys read in June? Did you guys participate in the Olympic Readathon? How did you do? Did that help you read more books? Did you read faster, or did you still read your normal speed? I have to read my normal speed so I can still understand what I'm reading and be able to actually talk about it with you guys. But because I mood read, a lot of my thicker books that I had planned to read didn't get read, so I read a lot of shorter books. So it looks like I read more than usual, but if you go by page count wise, I really didn't. But that will do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it and enjoyed it, please consider hitting the little like button. If you haven't subscribed, I would love to have you be part of the Nerdy Narrative family, so click that subscribe button. In the description box down below, there is a link to the Discord if you would like to come chat with the rest of us over there, and a link to my Patreon if you would like to support the channel that way. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.